Greetings, danglers and wafters. Yes, my name's Dangle, and I'm here to tell you about my new army that I said I would never create when I created my dwarf army. I said that would be the only one. But here I am to introduce my second one. So I had the dwarf army, and I actually built that army before I'd ever actually played a real physical game of Ninth Age. So I was playing a lot on Tabletop Simulator, but I'd never actually played a physical game. And one thing that always bugged me about the army was that the miniatures were just far too big for a 20mm base. So I had all these Mantic miniatures and the Skibor miniatures, which were beautiful miniatures, but they were just far too big. And the way, particularly, that I glued together the spears, they just never stood together in a rank and file comfortably. So I decided I was going to look around for a second army, just to do one properly this time in terms of modeling. And what I've always been really into is having like a storyline and some fluff and some ideas of who the army is, rather than just saying, well, these are just a bunch of soldiers. So what I was looking for was a storyline that I could get my head around, I could get into, but also some models that I would really enjoy building, and also models that would stack up in rank and file and look nice. And I settled on Warriors of the Dark Gods, our second army. And there was a few things that led to that decision. So where I live and where Creekschmidt lives is up in the northeast of England, and we are still we do still feel the influence of the Roman occupation up here. You know, we spend a lot of time standing around talking about what the Romans have ever done for us and the things that they've brought. And there's lots of Roman ruins. And when you're at school, you get taken on school trips, and there's all these things around the place that remind us of the Roman occupation, especially Hadrian's Wall. So Hadrian's Wall runs very close to where I live and where I work. There's actually a museum to Hadrian's Wall very close to the museum. And I hear a lot about the Roman history of the place that I live, because I work at a university actually, and I speak to people who know about this sort of thing. And they would tell me tales of Roman generals or governors who would be sent to the various frontiers and regions of the Roman Empire and be told that they were going to govern that area, and they would raise an army to protect Roman interests in that area. And they would become very, very powerful. And it would be very tempting for them to think, oh, hey, look, I've got this great big army now of all these people. I can just go back and cross the border and invade into Rome, because my army, I could just, I'm completely autonomous here. And that was the thing, that there was laws against that sort of thing happening. So I've cut and pasted some text here, which is historically accurate because it's directly from Wikipedia. But it's saying that Roman magistrates were granted the title of general because they would rule an army, but they were forbidden from riding back into Rome at the head of that army. And as soon as they crossed the border back into Rome, then they were not considered to be a general or a magistrate anymore, and they were not allowed to command troops. And actually, the phrase "crossing the Rubicon" comes about because that's exactly what Julius Caesar did. So the Rubicon was a river that was to the north of Rome. So he was stationed in Gaul, and he mustered an army and became very, very strong and crossed the river which marked the border between Rome and Gaul. And crossing the Rubicon, the point of no return, he became a condemned criminal then, and he had to go and sweep through the rest of Rome and take control. And I was hearing these stories, and I was thinking, actually, that sounds like something like the Warriors of the Dark Gods would do. Particularly something like envy or pride. They would, you can just picture some governor looking back and thinking, oh, I've been sent away from the capital, and I'm in this provincial region. I've got this really, really powerful army. Why shouldn't I go back and take my proper place at the seat of ruling in the capital of the empire? So at the same time as that, I found some really nice historical figures made by a company called Victrix, who do Roman and kind of ancient historical 28mm plastic miniatures, and the all different ranges of different things. So the miniatures were very nice, and I had thought that the story of the Romans that I had heard fitted quite nicely with something like, particularly an envy or a pride, Warriors of the Dark Gods army. So yeah, that's what I decided to do. the idea was going to be that maybe an empire army had set out north to try and conquer the wastes in some way, and then encountered something which had turned them to one of the dark gods, to turn them towards the favor of one of the dark gods. So I thought that possibly the general of the army would be some kind of sorcerer or somebody who they'd met who'd managed to bewitch or enthrall the leader of this army and turn them to the favor of envy or pride. I ended up going with envy. And actually, Victrix make this really nice. One of the models that you can get is a war elephant with this howdah thing. And I thought this would be perfect for a battle shrine. So the general of my army is the sorceress. And she rides this elephant, which is the battle shrine, which is perfect for that, I think. So yeah, she's the one who's turned them all bad, really. And she's not devoted to Kalima herself, but she's the one who's certainly turned the loyal Imperials to the ways of the dark gods. So she's my general. I've got a chosen lord as well. So this is one of the Victrix Roman generals. So there's a Roman general box set that you can get, and they're all on horseback and they all have different things. So he's got paired weapons. You can see that picture on the right, sorry, on the left, but he's got a couple of different scabbards there. And I've actually given him an old Citadel Miniatures plastic sword. I think it must be like an Eldar power sword or something, or an elf sword or something. Because the one thing about the historical miniatures is that the weapons that they actually carry, obviously they're true scale and they don't look particularly scary compared to some of the Citadel and the other more fantasy weapons. So he's my chosen lord, and he's obviously has the favor of envy, so that when you see my chosen knights, they have envy as well. And so he can I can deploy the knights, and then he can sit in whichever of the two units of cavalry that I decide I want to have at the end of deployment. So I have those two characters, the sorcerer and the chosen lord. The warriors are my lovely Victrix Roman legionnaires. So there's two box sets that you can get from Victrix. One is legionnaires advancing, and one is attacking. So I got a box of each. And the first two ranks are legionnaires attacking, and they're kind of swinging the weapons and leaning into the shields. And the rear two ranks are legionnaires advancing, and they're just kind of like marching. So it looks quite nice that the first two ranks are the ones actually in the game are participating in the combat, and they're the ones who are leaning in with their weapons, and the second and the third rank are kind of just marching up behind and keeping formation. And the Victrix models come with different standard bearers. There's these horn players and there's sergeants. So I'm really happy with these as my core troops. I've got 2 blocks of 20 warriors who are my core troops, as well as the core. What the Victrix models have a command sprue, and some of the standard bearers and musicians are wearing like animal pelts. And I saw these and I thought these would look brilliant as fallen. So I've kind of a little conversion, just a weapon swap, and I've given these paired weapons each. So actually, I actually bought some 1 sprue of Victrix Vikings just to get the axes that were of the same scale. Bought the 1 little sprue off eBay. So these are just the command sprue models, but with the bear and lion pelts. But they've got a little weapon swap, so they've each got paired weapons. And I thought, so these obviously haven't got the mark of envy. And my idea was that maybe these guys were like rangers or scouts or kind of some kind of other non-standard legionnaire type infantry that had kind of gone feral a little bit. So they were always like the outriders and the scouts and the rangers. But when the army kind of turned to the warriors, to the dark gods, these didn't particularly take the favor of the gods, but they'd gone so feral that they were quite capable of fighting alongside the other warriors. So that's what I've gone with these. These are guys who are kind of worshipping the animals and gone very down a dark road, but are still human for the time being, but are wearing the animal pelts. I just think this is when I saw these on the sprue, I was like, I know exactly what I'm doing with these models. The chosen are slightly different. So these aren't Roman; these are Greek hoplites. I just really like it's a little bit like Spartan. It's a little bit 300, isn't it? The helmets with the crest pointing forward, and the breastplates look really nice. And I've bought some halberds from, what was it, Firestorm or Fireforge, something like that, just to make them a little bit more scary, just sort of hit a little bit more of a punch. But I've got 8 chosen with halberds of envy as well as my main kind of scory counter charge, scary, not scory, scary and scory counter charging unit. They've got warrior knights, so I've got 2 units of warrior knights. These are Imperial Roman cavalry, and they come with these things that are supposed to be like spears that are actually already on the sprue, but I'm just going to use these as lances instead. So they're just going to charge in and whack you with the spears as their lances. So these just really fit. The only thing about the historical miniatures is that the horses are actually quite small. So the horses actually fit really nicely on the right size base, but just in terms of scale, man to horse, they just look a little bit small, but it doesn't really matter. These are fine. I'm still waiting for some more transfers to finish off these shields. So I've got 2 units of warrior knights. Those are quite nice. The other thing that Victrix make is a chariot. So the chariot is kind of a Celtic chariot, and there's different riders that you can have on the chariot. But I just saved back one of my legionnaires with one of the halberds, and I kind of popped him on the chariot. So it was really nice that Victrix made the people standing and the cavalry and the chariot and the elephant. So I could really start to feel like this. There's, you know, one of the things about this army is that it is kind of an imperial army turned bad, or a Roman army, and I haven't got any Feldrax or dragons or wretched ones or anything particularly like chaos looking. It's just like an evil human bad, or not even an evil, very envious human army that just happens to have no artillery. So I've got the warrior chariot. I've got some warhounds. So these are, my son had a bucket of little zoo animals that he'd grown out of that were just tiny little plastic things. And I thought, I know exactly what I can do with them, because they're exactly the right length to fit on one of the bases. So these are my warhounds. I've got lions and tigers that I've spray painted and then just contrast painted. So warhounds, war cats, battle cats. I haven't painted them green, but it was very tempting. But these are just a nice little fast chaffy unit. Again, I didn't really want to spend a lot of money on this army, and the Victrix models are very, very cheap. And I just found these, and I thought these will do perfectly for warhounds. And it does kind of keep in with the Imperial menagerie, and, you know, like the Romans might have had lions that they were using for whatever, gladiators and what, you know, that whole thing. The only thing that is kind of fantasy is the model that I'm using as a Chimera. So I had thought, well, you know, if you did have an Imperial army with warriors of the Sun Griffin, wherein, you know, they were riding griffins or hippogriffs or something, then, you know, maybe one of them would have chosen to stay with the army. You know, maybe some of them, when the knights themselves had, you know, turned to chaos or been killed or whatever, maybe the Imperial menagerie and all the different animals had just buggered off, but one of them had stayed because it was just like the scent of blood and things, or maybe it had a keeper. So I've got one model of a Chimera, which is just something 3D printed that I got off Etsy. So that's my Chimera model. Yeah, so this is the army. So 2 lots of warriors, 2 big blocks of warriors, fallen. I've got the chosen there, 2 units of cavalry, which the chosen lord will run with the cavalry. I'm thinking that I might put the battle shrine in one of the units of warriors actually as well. Because it does have things like grind attacks in close combat, and it'd be a shame to just have it cowering at the back, just casting spells at things. So yeah, that's the army. I'm quite pleased with that. I'm quite proud of it. I think it looks quite good, and I like having something with a little bit of a storyline, and I look forward to showing off how they perform in battle. So thank you for watching. Yeah, so quickly the army list. This is the first build that I used. I've given the general Veil Walker and the Battle Shrine and Wizard Master evocation path and some protective things. The Chosen Lord has Touch of Greatness on his pair weapons, and I've gone with Dark Prelate as well, just so I've got he can just pack a little bit of extra punch. I can maybe turn a combat if he's involved in the combat and it gets prolonged. 2 lots of warriors, one's cut down to 14 so that the battle shrine can go in that unit because it has the footprint of 6 warriors. Chosen 2 units of knights, Chimera, and the Warhounds. I think that's 492 in total. So that's my list. Okay, thank you.